So we're talking about transformation this evening, and so many of you have shared your transformation stories with us over the last year. I just wanted you to take a moment to close your eyes. Thank you, Peter. I want you to think about the one big thing that has happened in your business environment in the past year and how that's had an impact on you. Okay, tell me what, shout it out. Shout me out the things that you've just been thinking about. The one thing. Decline of print. Yeah, really important one. There's a lot of nodding going on, yes? New opportunities. Remote working, good one. Sugar tax, yeah. Sugar tax is tough. Any others? Brexit, yep. In-housing, AI. Yeah, they're coming thick and fast. They're absolutely. There's so much happening. There's so much change. We've been seeing it all the time. And there's a lot happening in the marketing industry as well. I like this from Forbes. It says, the defining challenge for marketing organizations in the 21st century is structural. It's not about the marketing department anymore. It's about marketing at the very core of business. So with that, we're going to carry on the conversation. I'd like to welcome my panel onto the stage. Thank you very much. Right, Lynda. Lynda is the Chief Exec of Macmillan Cancer Support. I have the massive privilege to be a trustee of Macmillan. And 5 years ago, when I first became a trustee, you were a joint head of marketing and then became the head of fundraising. I think, Lynda, actually you did one of the most amazing things of a job share that genuinely worked. But now you're the chief exec. One of the things that we asked before was, what one thing has happened in your last year that's been really important for you?
So I think the biggest thing that I've done in the last year, so I've been in this job for nearly 2 years, is completely change the leadership team at Macmillan. And that wasn't because the leadership team that we had in place before weren't great. They were, but they weren't the right people for this time now. So that's been a massive shift for me, having to recruit a brand new team. And you think it's going to be so easy getting the right people, and you think it's going to be so easy, we're all going to seamlessly work together. But spending time getting that team doing that has been the biggest thing. I mean, one of the things about transformation at Macmillan is it is a bit like turning a tanker anyway, because we are a massive organisation and we don't just...
Give me a feel of the size.
Yeah, so Macmillan, this year we're about to hit somewhere in the region of 240 million, which is all of our fundraised income this year. It is huge. It comes from people like me and you and people in this room, and I thank you all for any part that you've played in that. We've got about 2,000 members of staff who actually work for Macmillan, and we've got 9,000 Macmillan nurses who work out there in the NHS that we have absolutely no control over, but who every day are out there being the Macmillan brand and are the most important part of our brand. So it's a big organisation, multifaceted with a lot of different cultures, and you have some people who, are eager and desperate and like get me out there, and other people who don't want to do that and don't want to change anything. And I guess it's the same for all of us in the room and getting that to happen.
Lisa, hello.
Hello.
Lisa Gilbert is the CMO of IBM and in UK and Ireland, and you've recently come over from the States. Tell me, what are your main priorities in transformation? Because it's a big task for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a massive task. So my priorities is really to, IBM is a 105-year-old company. Transformation is our thing. If it wasn't, we'd be still a meat slicing company. I don't think we'd be in the game anymore, if you know what I mean, because we have been in the past. So it's really about mapping with our CEO, Ginny Rometty's transformation of turning into a cloud platform and cognitive computing company, right? So how does my marketing team then support that here in the UK and Ireland?
And a cognitive computing company.
Right.
Explain that to me.
So that's our word of the way we say artificial intelligence, or the way we talk about it is augmented intelligence. So it's really not man versus machine. It's man, or in this case, woman and machine.
Jon Wilkins, you're the chairman of Karmarama.
Yes.
You've done we both did the same thing last year, sold our businesses.
Yeah.
But you were previously at Naked, and you've done one of those very brave things, which is not just sell to another agency group, but to Accenture. And I guess that there was quite a lot of shock going through the industry, a few questions, but then also, what does it mean for the industry? What does it mean for you at Karmarama, and why did Accenture do it?
I think what's happened in the creative industries over the last 20 years has been quite sad, really. I mean, there's been some amazing work, but for those of you who do work agency side, our influence and our size of the pie and our ability to work in multiple channels has sort of diminished as clients have taken on more agencies, procurement have come into play. And if you're a very creative human being, actually working in one channel on a tight budget with somebody cost controlling you is quite a painful place to be, because creatives are naturally very expressive people and they like to work with the biggest gamut of channels in the broadest possible way. So I think for us, what we were interested in was the scale of the opportunities that we would get by partnering with Accenture Interactive and thus a management consultancy oriented business, because they do have incredible relationships. And we're only 2 or 3 weeks in, but the conversations are conversations we would have never had as an independent, both in terms of their global reach but in terms of their seniority. Why have they done it? I think well, from their point of view, the interesting thing that I think is happening is the experience of a business and a brand is now incredibly complicated. There's multiple channels, both obviously digital, brand, real, whatever, and consumers are quite alienated in some ways by some of the techniques that new technologies are bringing to marketers in terms of intrusiveness and in terms of, it's not all being positive, and
Yep.
Consumer trust is declining every year, and I think ultimately one of the interesting things they're looking for is help in terms of bringing sort of humanity to the consumer experience. And agencies are very good at understanding how people tick. We're very good at coming up with motivating ideas, and I think they're hoping that, albeit in a small way relatively, that we can bring sort of planning, human thinking and creativity to the heart of the consumer experience.
Wow.
Fingers crossed.
We'll see this time next year.
Exactly.
We'll find
see
out.
how we go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Simon, you're a digital transformation expert. You're currently at Citi Private Bank, but this is the sort of, you've done this before. How is it tackling the transformation journey for you? Because particularly in financial services, it's not an area where we think they're really at the front end of changing digitally. Has it been difficult? How do you get that transformation?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, and I think I think it's fair to say financial services does have a lot of challenges there. I think one of the issues I've seen historically with the financial services industry is a lot of people, when they think about digital transformation, they think about technology. But I think it's important to understand that technology is really just the enabler for digital transformation. An analogy I often use is driving a car. It's great if you want to get from A to B. You've got to have the car. Without the car, you're not going to get there. But if you don't know how to drive the car and you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And that's the important part. For me, it's not about the technology. The technology is the enabler, sure. And it was great to see that that response to that chart just now, because for me, it's much more about culture and knowing who you are and where you're going than anything else. So one of the reasons I joined Citi about 18 months ago was because the support for digital is really embedded into the organisation. You're right the way from the top. So digital is on the voice of the board, and it's a very big business Citi, and that's quite rare, I find, especially within FS. But a lot of financial services businesses will have digital within perhaps their values or their goals. They'll say we're digital first, but then that won't cascade down through the organisation. And I think that's a really key point. And for me, the biggest challenge that I've had, and that I think I will always have, is changing the culture. And for me at Citi, I'm working within the private bank. Private banking is not a sector that's embraced digital a lot historically.
What were they like when you were there? When you first turned up, were they all embracing, saying, great, this is just what we need? Did they really get what you were trying to do?
How do I answer that one? There's some press people in the room, right? I have to be careful. No, I mean, yes. So I think people could see the value in it. But a great example is shortly after I joined, I was up on the stage at one of the global town halls. And I had the UK guys in front of me, UK employees in front of me. I had the screens with the people in New York and Switzerland and various places around the world. And I went off script, as I often do, and I am sort of a little bit now. I asked the question, let's have a show of hands if you've recently been to our website, or even if we have a website. And of the probably thousands of people I could see in front of me, there was probably no more than I could count on my hands a number of people who were there. And that's because really, I think private banking historically has not seen the value in digital. In the industry, it's very much about one-to-one relationships. And how can you really do that in digital? Well, maybe 10, 15 years ago you couldn't really, but now the opportunity to create really personalized experiences is absolutely there. And I think that's one of the really interesting points. But without that support throughout the organization, there's no way we could have made the change we have. Yeah. And I think if I were to stand on stage now and ask that same question, I haven't done that, but I might do that again soon, I would say we'd get over 90% of the people who now know who we are and what we're doing. And through that, it's not just about great, our employees have gone to our website, who cares? It's about the fact that they're really involved, they're proactively coming to us with ideas, and that enables us to drive the transformation much harder, because it's great, being a digital guy, I can drive certain things, but I don't know the business as well as a lot of people. I don't know the clients as well as the guys that are talking to them every day. And digital's ever evolving and ever changing. So without that input, it's impossible.
You talked about it earlier on culture, and we've just begun to touch on it. How important and how difficult has culture change been for you? Did you need to change your culture at Macmillan?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Macmillan is an amazing organisation, and we've been around for over 100 years. But I think if we've seen anything that happened last year, that is to say, just because you're part of the establishment and you're a big and you're an old and established organisation, we'd be completely crazy to think we'll still be here in another 100 years' time if we don't adapt. But from a culture point of view, there are so many differences within Macmillan, and you have to take the pace of change slower or faster. So the commercial people in the organisation, the guys that go out and raise the money, they have a very go-getting culture. They would embrace you really quickly, and they'd be all over digital, and it would be great. If you work as a nurse on the helpline, you have a very different sort of culture, and I guess I'm slowing down the way I speak maybe as an illustration of that. Neither of those cultures is wrong, but the marrying of both of those and bringing them together and trying to persuade people who may not want to change things that change is absolutely essential, and that we want to embrace digital as well across the business. It's been a big challenge, and we have not cracked it. We're midway through it.
Culture is the differentiator, and I think there's some great quote, culture is happening when nobody's looking, right? So that's how you've embraced culture. So how do I get them out of get them out of their comfort zone, right? So it's really establishing a culture of trust. And so we've put together this program called Bold and Brave. So my whole team knows that it's all about going for it, and also celebrating those epic fails, right? I was just talking to somebody today about how I was so proud of them that they went for it even though it didn't go.
Our challenge going through our transformation is probably making sure that we retain our culture and commitments, creativity, which is obviously the easiest thing for people to sort of knock this partnership on. I mean, we're pretty embedded. We have a descriptor of the culture, and we have a almost manifesto. We have a series of behaviours that we reward actively through all our staff 360 reviews. So in a way, there's no fear of change that's built into the business. It doesn't mean we're going to be good at it, but there's no fear of change. If you don't like change, you shouldn't work in agencies, to be honest.
Simon, what are you doing? Are you trying to create a digital culture? Are you trying to help support the culture of the whole bank?
Well, yeah, I guess both. It's always important. There's no point in me trying to drive some sort of digital culture that doesn't fit into the broader piece. We need to make sure that everything we do digitally is in keeping with the business culture as a whole. I suppose for me, as I say, we sort of started from a low level, I suppose, in terms of digital engagement. So a lot of what I've been doing over the course of the last 18 months is really just getting people in the business engaged. So I run a number of programs there. So I have a steering committee that I run once a quarter, and that's not just your technology, your digital, your marketing guys, but really is the people who have the frontline contact with the customers. And I think that's really, really important to embed. Digital and marketing mustn't sit within a little silo. There are still far too many silos in businesses these days, in my opinion. So there are a lot of people very widespread across the business, and also the nature of being somewhere like Citi is it is a massive business. So yes, I sit within the private bank, but there's a commercial bank, there's a consumer bank. It's a very broad business. and there's a lot of value in knowledge sharing there. So bringing those people together for regular discussions is one, but then also engaging people one-to-one as well, and again outside of the realms of just technology and compliance and the sort of day-to-day stakeholders, but really the senior leadership team, getting their views, getting the views of people right the way through the organisation.
And I really like your point that you've got to kind of constantly keep going. You're not going to get to the end. It's going to just keep going and going. We were talking earlier on about innovation. And part of that constantly striving to change is around innovation. How have you been tackling that at Macmillan?
I'd say that's my biggest worry, actually, about the organisation, our ability to innovate at scale and at pace. So I think, again, going back to the different parts of the organisation, in the fundraising world, we're good at innovation, and we're also quite good. I loved your description of going at it and failing, and we've done that in fundraising. But I think in other parts of Macmillan, we're actually quite nervous about innovation. So I think constantly talking to people, and particularly engaging with younger people around that, and looking at different products that we might be able to put into our wonderful mix, just to future-proof us, I think. But I think we've still got a way to go on it.
Lisa, presumably, is innovation an issue for you as well? Are you part of an innovation company?
Well, we are part of an innovation company, but actually it's sometimes a little bit about the phrase, the cobbler's shoes phrase, So for the last couple of months, I've been talking to a couple audiences around how I believe cognitive or Watson or AI, whatever you choose to call it, will fundamentally and positively transform marketing, right? We talked about that in your survey. So I go up and I talk about it, and we have the conversation, and then it's Q&A time. And then I have this trickle down my back waiting for the question, which is, oh, you're IBM. You must be doing space cognitive going on. And my answer until a month ago was pretty light. So now I'm engaging in 5 cognitive projects where I'm using Watson to actually affect my own marketing, from how we measure employee engagement internally to how we measure external engagement, to how we're doing it right now. We just kicked it off this week, very interesting, using Watson for our bid optimization from a media platform standpoint, and how that's learning and learning from all of the experiences we have trying to bid media, and then being more and more accurate as we go. So we'll see how that goes.
Simon, I'm going to ask you a question from up here. Will Brexit impede or accelerate transformation? Is it going to make any difference to you, do you think?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. No, I'm kidding.
Move on.
Next.
I think it's a really interesting area. I think probably a bit of both. I don't want to sit on the fence, but I've had a number of conversations with sort of fintech companies recently, and they're all actually quite excited by the opportunities. I think being able to work internally without some of the regulation and some of the input sort of excites them a little bit. So I don't think it's not going to hold back innovation or creativity as a whole. I think there are areas certainly where there are going to be a lot of challenges, and we're going to have almost certainly a bit of turmoil over the next couple of years, and that's always a challenge, because you're creating something. I mean, ultimately, you want an end goal. You want to know why you're creating this thing, and if that end goal is constantly shifting, it's difficult to know what to do. So I think it might slow down the pace of change in some organisations, and also some organisations are going to be shifting things to other locations and focusing on their structure, and are they suited to being in the UK. So I think there are certainly areas where it'll slow down, but I don't see it hindering it as a whole.
Thank you so much
fun.
to all of you, to Simon, to Jon, to Lisa, and to Lynda. Thank you.